Hi, and thank you all for coming out tonight, despite the chilly and raw weather. I'm Gus Steves. I'm a Southbridge Town Councilor, a new Grange member, and founding member for the Southbridge Agricultural Commission several years ago. And as involved in the Grange as we've started to become, my fiance and I, we wanted to start doing some more events here in Dudley and in the area. And one of the things that we thought was kind of important is what's going on with the legislature and agricultural laws. As many of you know, agriculture and our food supply are increasingly becoming an issue of concern for various reasons, including corporate control, climate change, pesticides, and the sheer distance much of it travels to get to us. Every year, government at all levels sees new proposals to change the laws that cover agriculture, and the Mass State House is no exception. This session has dozens of ag-related bills on the docket, changing tax laws, pesticide use, including hemp and marijuana as crops, and studying various ag-related needs among them. Many of those bills will find their way to the Joint Committee on Environment, Natural Resources, and Agriculture, which is co-chaired by tonight's speaker, Senator Gobi, and on which our own Senator Ryan Fatman sits. Jason King is here from his office. Senator Gobi has been a legislator since 2001, serving 14 years in the House before succeeding Senator Steve Brewer in the Senate in 2015. She is a lawyer by trade, a graduate of my alma mater, Worcester State, and has been an advocate for agriculture, environment, sportsmen, and other related issues for many years now. Please welcome Senator Gobi.
I wasn't expecting, I need to stand back here, huh? Is that for you? Okay. I always get a little nervous with these podiums because look at how they are. I look like a Pez dispenser. I come up too high, I can't see. But I'm happy to be here tonight, and thank you for coming out on the coldest night of the year, right, Gus, so far. But I'm very pleased to be here. Is this okay if I stand a little, there's a pretty big echo. Is it okay for me to stand a bit to the side of that? Is that good? Is that better? Okay. So as Gus mentioned, I'm the chair of the Environment, Natural Resources, and Ag Committee. And typically, we have about 300 bills that come before that committee. And today we had a hearing. In fact, I left it a little bit early. We started at 1 o'clock today, and the big topic was pesticides. And we have put out pesticides bills in the past. Just real quickly, the kind of the two sides that we hear from is that obviously some of the farmers, some of the agricultural folks say, hey, look, we have to be able to use some sort of pesticides to be able to control things to make sure that things are going to grow okay in our gardens if they're not doing all organic growing. We hear from folks that manage soccer fields, golf courses, and talk about things that they have to do. We hear a lot from arborists that say, hey, look, there's certain pests that we need to be able to use specific pesticides that we have to use for specific pests that are going after some of our tree species. And then on the other side, we get some people, especially with folks that, do you have any people that are doing bees here? Any apiary folks? Yeah. Did you have trouble with your bees this winter? Did you lose, last winter, did you have any problems? Did you lose anything? Hives, no issue?
This is my first year in Massachusetts.
Oh, okay. How did you do?
I haven't gotten them through the winter yet.
Oh, okay. So you're just starting with it. So obviously one of the big issues is about neonics. And so what Massachusetts had, a bill that we've put out in the past that's actually passed through the Senate has not passed in the House. This is in prior sessions. And that basically was to say, okay, we understand that there are some people that they need to use neonics. When we talk to farmers, one of the things that comes up a lot is that, it's not necessarily, it's when they're applied. So there's a lot of education that goes with the application of when neonics are applied. So if they're applied earlier in the morning or later in the evening when the bees aren't more as active, that seems to be okay, that there's something that you can do with that. So one of the things that we're finding is that it's a big education piece. So if people know how to apply the neonics the right way, then you don't run into as many problems with bees. Then people say, well, wait a minute now, bees don't stay in one place. So maybe that farmer over here is doing what they're supposed to be doing, but what if the one a mile away isn't? And that's some of the issue. Is that correct with that, right? So that's one of the issues that we've run into. So what we did in the last session, we said, okay, if you're going to apply neonics, you have to be a licensed applicator. So you have to get the approval through the state, you have to go through the course, and you have to be shown that you have the correct license in order to apply the neonics. And we really felt comfortable that way. That was something we worked with the agricultural groups, we worked with the Mass Nursery and Landscape Association on, and we worked with the Worcester County Bee, especially in some of the other bee associations. And that was the one that they felt very comfortable with. As I mentioned, that bill a year or so ago did pass the Senate. It had not gone through the House, so when it doesn't go through in those 2-year sessions, it starts all over again. So today, we heard all those pesticide bills again today. And as I mentioned, I left about 5 o'clock and the hearing was still going on, and we started at 1. There were about 120 people or so that came in to testify. So I left in order to get here. But that's kind of, that's what's going on, at least with those pesticide bills. We had a lot of other ones that were before us today, too. A lot of them dealing with some of the Roundup issues. And, you know, some of those issues, of course, are more on the federal level with what's going on with Bayer and Monsanto and the things that they are producing. Now, what we're seeing, too, is that a lot of the larger stores, like the Home Depot and the Lowe's, they're not even selling a lot of those products now. You know, they've got rid of a lot of those that contain, like glyphosate, am I saying that correctly? Thank you. That they've already gotten rid of a lot of those things, that you can't find those on the shelves now anyway. So, a couple things. I think as we look to what we're going to do with that, we also have a committee on public health, and they have a whole slew of those bills in their committee as well. So after we had this hearing, after the hearing was done today, I'm going to be meeting with my House Chair, Smitty Pignatelli, who's from the Berkshires, and we're going to sit down with the chairs from the Public Health Committee to kind of see what the bills that they have in their committee, what we have in ours, where there may be some overlap, and to really see what we can do and to do something that makes some sense. So today at the hearing, it was probably 90% of the people that were there to say that they want to see a ban on the glyphosate. That was the big one. There was a smaller percentage of people that were there, mainly from the nursery groups that came in, and some arborists that said, hey, look at this, there's other ways to do this, there's other ways to take a look at this. That doesn't mean every single pesticide, everything is bad. But we heard some very emotional stories today. We had people that came in that have had some very severe physical problems from being exposed, and that's an issue. One thing that came up that was kind of interesting that I hadn't really thought about, that I didn't think was going to come up today anyway, was, of course, we had the triple E scare. Now, I don't know, did Dudley, did you get sprayed? Okay. So one of the things that when they were talking about spraying in a couple, I have 28 towns, by the way, in my Senate district. My Senate district goes from the New Hampshire border. I have towns like Winchendon, Ashby, Ashburnham, down to the Connecticut border, Munson, Wales, Holland. So I have a pretty large area, and it encompasses around the Quabbin Reservoir. So I go up past Ware and Palmer. And I live in Spencer, so that's really the most eastern part of the district. But I had heard from folks when MDR was doing the spraying in conjunction with the Department of Public Health. Now, did you have any concerns here in the town when they were doing spraying? What was your concern?
The fact that it was poisonous and what the effects would be long-term.
Right. And, if you had gone onto the website for the Department of Public Health, I mean, it did say, it said, you should bring your animals in. If you have fish ponds, you might want to cover the fish ponds. And so that does upset people. And so one of the other bills that was in the hearing today was, look, if there's going to be spraying in our communities, why doesn't a town have an opportunity to say, we don't want it? Even if it's not the town doing it for Triple E, let's say it's National Grid that's coming in with herbicides to spray things around their poles and their wires. And, you know, should a town have an opportunity to say, we don't want that to happen? So one of the bills that was before our committee today was to basically allow towns to make their own, to working with their own boards of health, to make those kind of rulings, to say that they can do things that are stricter than what the state does. And there is some precedent for that. We do that with Title V now. You know, there are set Title V regulations for the state, but a community, a town can vote to do things more stringent as long as it comes to a town vote. Right now, you can't do that with pesticides. They don't allow you to do that. So in order for that to happen, it would have to be a change in the legislature to allow the towns to make those decisions on their own. As you can imagine, I would expect that we would get a lot of pushback from places like National Grid, because I'm sure that they would not want to have a situation where every, you know, 351 cities and towns are doing 351 different things. And I can understand why that might be a problem for them. So that was really, those were really the big bills that came today. Yes?
What about the railroads that spray vegetation?
Yeah, it would probably be the same. You know, the other thing though, and not that I'm an expert on it, but I've had some have had some back and forth with railroads. They're a totally different animal because they come under federal protections, and it's very limited what the state can do with that. They're a totally different, yeah. Yeah, because even in fact, you know, we've had issues sometimes with, you know, blowing the horns late at night, and forget it. Trying to find a way to make them stop is impossible.
We have railroad tracks around.
Yeah.
Right along the river.
Yeah.
French River, and that's
Yeah, and I don't know, is that CSX? I don't know who has those lines out this way.
Providence, Worcester, but they were bought recently in the past couple of years by somebody out in the west.
Yeah, so, I mean, there is a rail division at the State House, and Jason could put you in touch with those folks, too. There is a rail division, and, you know, you can have a kind of a sit-down with them, but it's not easy, because they basically can almost do what they want. They're under a whole different bunch of regulations. So those were kind of the big things that were before us today, but I did want to talk, I know that there were a few other things. I just wanted to hit upon a couple of the issues that we're seeing in our committee that are very big. Obviously, the whole hemp issue. Now, do we have any hemp folks out here? Does that sound right, hemp folks? I don't know. One of the things that I've been very upset about is because our farmers were told over a year ago that if they put hemp in, that they would have an opportunity to do it for the oils, for the CBD, because that's where all the money is. In May of this year, the Department of Agriculture, with the Department of Public Health, came out with a notice to the farmers and basically said, well, you know, you can put the hemp in the ground, but you're not going to be able to use it for CBD. At the same time, as you know, you can walk down, I bet you if you walk into the 7-Eleven down the street, you'll see all the oil products, and they're not cheap. You can buy anything you want, and if you can't get it there, you can get it online and get shipped to your house. So everybody can do it, except our farmers. And it makes no sense whatsoever. So we have asked, and when I say we, you know, Senator Fatman and I and a group of us, you know, we've gone back to the administration and said, look, this is ridiculous. Give us the reasoning why our farmers, first of all, they were promised that if you put it in, that there was going to be a market for it. And, I mean, that's the market. And what I've said to the governor is, you know, you talk about doing things to keep farms viable in Massachusetts. You know, we're down to about 109 dairy farms left in Massachusetts. Think about that. I mean, at one time, Worcester County had 130 themselves. So 109 for the entire state. And one of the things that can keep the farms viable is by diversifying, and that's one way, is being able to do hemp and to be able to do the CBD oil. So I'm hoping, you know, there is pressure on the administration, there's pressure on MDR and Department of Public Health to do something about it. Because the other thing is, if they're not going to let the farmers do it, why are they allowing it to be sold in our stores? And totally unregulated, by the way, completely unregulated. Because what they wanted our farmers to do was going to be totally regulated. But yet they allow a product that has no regulations on it. So that's something that has a whole group of us kind of steaming mad over. And we're hoping to get some resolution on that before too long. On a couple of things that are a positive, starting in 2017, again, with Senator Fatman's help too. Hi, come on in. The HIP program, the Healthy Initiatives Program, are you familiar with that at all? We started a program in Massachusetts that for people who are on SNAP benefits, so supplemental nutritional assistance programs, that we worked out oh, the poor puppy over there, so that folks would have an opportunity to buy fresh foods at farmers markets or through a CSA, that they basically would get these HIP dollars, so to speak. So for every dollar of a SNAP benefit would be $1 for HIP that they could spend at the farmers markets. Just to give you an idea, for July, August, and September of this year, that was over $2.6 million that program generated for our farmers. Extremely, extremely successful, that the farmers were a part of the HIP program. And I've got a farm that's not too far from me. It's actually in Leicester, which isn't one of my towns, but it's pretty close to me. And I had gone in over the summer to grab some stuff, and it was kind of a rainy day. And they are part of the HIP program. And I was talking to the folks that run the place, and they said to me, you know, the HIP program has been unbelievable. They said, you know, sometimes some people won't come in when it's a rainy day, but the people who have SNAP benefits and have HIP, they continue to come. And they've kept them going on very lousy, sometimes when it hasn't been great weather, and you know, other people aren't going in to do the shopping at the farmers markets or at the farm stands. So it's been an extremely popular program, one that we've been able to put money in the budget on, and actually it's so successful it might run out of money come probably February, because what we're trying to do, the farmers want, they put in winter crops, and they're selling, this is all year round, to keep this program going, because one thing that we have found, if you start a program, you don't want to have it so successful 3-4 months and then end it. Because people, just because out of habit, you know how we all are the same way. If you do something and then it's not there for 4 or 5 months, then you get out of the habit of doing it and you're not in, and it's a problem. But it's also a big problem for the farmers who are putting certain crops in the ground or in their greenhouses. So it's been extremely good program. It's one that we're hoping is going to continue. And in fact, again, with Senator Fatman's help, we're trying to get it codified to put it right in the statute so that it stays in there, that program will stay, instead of us having to go every year as part of the budget to put a line item in for it. So we're trying to make it so it's going to be its own separate entity and continue for years and years to come. So that's a really good one. One of the other ones that were at the hearing today, in 2016, there was a ballot question. There was question 3 on the ballot, and it had to do with changing sizes for to get rid of gestation crates and a few other things. The Humane Society of the United States put in about $2.5 million towards that ballot question, and at the ballot box, it won at the ballot box by about 78%. That same group now wants to repeal it, doesn't want it to go through. And they're coming back now because they've worked out some sort of agreement. And I get a little upset at the hearing today, because the Humane Society of the United States is just that. They represent the United States, and they do a lot with these large factory farms. We're not a large factory farm state. You know, that's not us. So now they want to go back and have this repealed because they've worked out some sort of deal with the major egg producers in the country. So they were at the hearing today, people from the Humane Society, and some guy that represents some big egg group from, I don't know where he was from. He wasn't from anywhere around here. And you know, the hypocrisy of it, to come in, is just very upsetting. Anyway, so, yes.
I have a question about that.
Yeah.
House Bill 4146
That's it, yeah.
Supporter of question 3, what are they doing to repeal it? Is that the repeal?
That would be the repeal. So, just so that you know, too, that I've actually already spoken to the Speaker of the House about that, because it's one of his members that filed the bill. It's a House member that filed that. And in my conversation with the Speaker, I mean, he's not inclined to put something forward that's going to change something that won at a ballot box. First of all, that ballot question doesn't even go into effect till 2022. You know, it was going to be spread over a few years. So it wasn't even, you know, but it won by 78% at the ballot box. And so it puts the legislature in a very bad position because they've done it before. We did it some years ago. When you don't listen to what people want at the ballot box, it doesn't turn out too well. So I don't think there's a big appetite to repeal that. So I don't see that moving forward. Anyway, bless you. A couple other things that I want to mention too. We did put out a plastic bag bill out of committee. Some of the environmental groups did not think it was strong enough. I kind of disagree with that. The bill that we put out, we took a look at what other cities and towns have done, because we've got about 110 cities and towns that on their own have already implemented a plastic bag ban of some sort in their communities. Right now, towns, as you know, can't raise taxes just on their own. They can't do that. So the way that it has been working for the cities and towns, the cities that have put in a bag fee, that stays with the, like with the store, that doesn't go to the city. So the environmental groups had wanted us to put out a bill that it would be a mandatory 10-cent fee on bags, okay? So that if you were at a store and you were going to grab a plastic bag, if they were still available, you're going to get charged 10 cents for every bag, okay? So out of our committee, you know, we took a look again at what other towns had done, what other areas had done, and we saw like even the Haverhill had put in a bag fee, and then it was repealed within a year. And any place that does have a current bag fee in, as I mentioned, it stays with the retailer. It doesn't go to the city or town anyway. So that's how we put we put it out that it would be optional. So that if the retailer wanted to institute a fee, they could, but they would not be required to. Now, I live in Spencer, and we have Big Y. Big Y in August on their own, they implemented a bag fee. So they have it in every Big Y store. So if you go into Big Y, if you don't have your own bag, they've got rid of the plastic bags. But you would get, I think I just knocked that off. You would get a paper bag, but they charge you 10 cents for it. And that's how they're doing it at Big Y. And they're doing it all their stores. Now, I had called the folks at Big Y. Their office is out of Springfield, their home office in Springfield, Avalon. And I wanted to get if they would release kind of their figures, because I was kind of curious. I said, you know, you must be keeping track. Like, what are you finding on how many people are buying the bags? You know what? And they wouldn't tell me. All they would say, no, it's definitely working. People are either bringing their own, but that's it. They wouldn't tell me, because I was really kind of curious how many people are actually buying the bags. I personally think that a lot of people already are bringing their bags anyway. You know, and I see that more and more, not just going into the grocery stores. I see more and more people when they're walking into Walmart or CVS or wherever, that they're doing that they're bringing their bags with them. So I do think that's working. The other big push, there's a whole group that wanted to get rid of plastic straws. I don't think we're going to do a plastic straw ban, but communities are doing it on their own now. Some communities, the styrofoam ban is the same thing. I mean, I don't think we're going to do it citywide, but a lot of it is the consumers are driving this.
And, you know, they're putting the pressure on the places that they go to in the restaurants. And so a lot of these places are already changing that way anyhow. So right now, we haven't looked at that to do a statewide. And the same thing with the plastic straws. We heard, it was interesting, we heard from people in the disability community that really rely on the plastic straws. That for them it's easier, more flexible. Yes, sir.
Yes. Didn't the state of Connecticut make it mandatory to charge for plastic bags?
They may have. They
Because
could have.
I know that if you go to a restaurant in Connecticut
Yeah.
and you want to get a take home,
They
charge you for that bag.
Yeah.
And I believe the state keeps the money.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Down in Runnings and
Yeah.
Putnam, and
They do it there?
Anything about it. I go to grab a bag, goes out there.
Yeah.
Oh, no, you can't have a bag, you pay for it.
Ah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
And it would make a lot more sense to have those kind of bags that still state can pay back to towns. Because the towns use a little extra help with health issues and clean up and those kinds of things. Basic things that are often
Yeah.
not covered.
Well, I mean, there's no question. I mean, I don't know what Dudley does for, do you have waste disposal service, or do you still have a town transfer station, or I don't know what you do here? Recycle center, yeah. And, you know, that's been an issue too, because of course with some of the stuff that's been going on in China, they're not taking back a lot of recycling. It's been a real problem to try to get rid of things. The big thing is the food waste too. And, you know, that fits in with a lot of other issues. Ryan also serves on the Food Policy Council that I've been on, and is part of, we have for the first time, we have a food systems caucus at the State House that we started this past year that Ryan's also on with me. And we're looking at kind of a whole host of things that could be helpful to people. One of the things that we're taking a look at, because of the food waste situation, for the type of foods that can be donated to food banks. So right now, you can't bring in prepared foods, which can be a problem. So sometimes, you know, you have situations where people have these large parties, something's happening, and that food has to all go to waste. And so we're looking at ways, you know, if there's ways to be able to donate prepared food, and obviously there's some, because you have to make sure that you can trace it if somebody were to get sick or what would happen. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I know Cambridge picks up compost, and I've seen over in, where was it? I think it was Long Meadow, they actually had kind of a town composting place. But I've always wondered why there isn't a statewide composting system where every household puts out their compost,
Yeah.
and it gets picked up, and it gets, you know, all their food scraps and peels and things, and it gets, you know, put into some large composting operation.
Yeah, you know, that's actually not a bad idea. I don't know, maybe they could, I wonder if they
You
would
know,
have to.
chemical fertilizers and things.
Used to always be picked up by piggeries, but now there's.
Yeah, that's a
Could we
good
do
point.
something like that?
I don't know, that's something, I don't know, that's something to look at. I mean, I could definitely check with DEP, because they take, I think DEP, no, I take that back, I gotta think for a second. Department of Agriculture has control over a lot of compost issues, which has been one of the I don't know if there's been some issues that have been happening in the paper in the Northbridge area. And there's actually a bill to try to put that under control of DEP. So right now, I believe with all food waste, I believe it all comes out under that department. And
Well, maybe a bill could be proposed to you know, have composting. And
yeah,
it could be
well, I guess maybe more like a pilot. Maybe if you had like a pilot project.
Education.
Yeah, well, maybe if you could do something as a pilot. That's worth looking into, though.
Yeah.
I'll take a look at that. I don't know if other states do that. Have you heard of any place else doing that? Any
I
other?
just think if we do so many, you know,
Yeah. Well, there's no question, because the food waste is a big part of like I compost at home, but, you know, sometimes I get lazy too. You know, I don't compost everything. I try to do my best, but.
And there's a lot of people, you know, who live in the city or apartment
Absolutely.
buildings, and
Right.
they can't have a compost heap out in the backyard.
Yeah, right, absolutely. Yeah, good point. Yes.
Can I It might be something good to look into each either too. That's related to the agricultural.
You have to, like, I don't remember every number is. Which that one?
That's the one that's about the agricultural resilience study
Oh.
project that's going on. That might be something to look into that.
Okay, yeah, maybe. Well, it could also be, well, the other thing too, because like I mentioned, we have this food systems caucus that we're trying to look at, you know, the whole life cycle of food. And so that could be something that we could take a look at.
Certainly gonna solve the problem.
Yeah,
Waste,
well.
at least it wouldn't be wasted.
Right,
It would go back
right.
into the whole, back into fertilizing.
Yeah, right. I'm sorry, did you have?
I was just gonna say, there's a guy in Vermont who, I don't think it's at the municipal level, I think it's private, but he takes all the compost from schools and
Yeah.
you know, institutions that are generating a lot of food waste. He has a ton of chickens, the chickens turn the compost, he sells the eggs, he sells the compost, like it's a fantastic operation.
Yeah.
But he has proved that it can be done on a large scale level.
Yeah, see, you know, I know that, like, grocery, I'm not sure what they're doing with it, to be honest with you right now, because obviously the grocery stores, you know, they have an awful lot of food waste because they have to, and that's what, actually, another thing that we're taking a look at is the expiration dates. And, you know, how accurate those expiration dates, and, you know, food is often good for a lot longer than what those expiration dates say. And and that's something we're actually working on, because that needs to be actually changed at the federal level. And Congressman McGovern is involved in trying to make some changes to that. Yep. Anyway, were there any specific questions besides, yeah?
Yeah, one of my big concerns is, I am a great lover for Wendell State Forest, and I
Yeah.
know they were fighting very
Yeah.
hard to save 80 acres of old, 100-year-old trees, and they even went to court, and they have a court date pending, but they went and to try to get some kind of,
I think they went to get an injunction, but they lost in court.
And,
Yeah. Yeah.
I went over there and I
Yeah.
cried, And, I've seen the 12-mile brook, I know this is a town forest, but it was just 12-mile brook conservation area in Wilbraham, we just wiped it out. And, Quabbin, and I have so many concerns because, I know the old growth trees, 70% of the carbon that they store is in the older trees, ones that are 84 to 225 years old. Yeah, 75% of the carbon stored in the trees is accumulated in the last half of their life. So the old trees are really, really important to combat climate change. And I don't think people realize this when, I know that you hear a lot about forest management.
Yeah.
Every time they do a great logging operation, you see little signs where they say how wonderful what they're doing is and how they're managing the forest. But I think forest management needs to be rethought in light of climate change. And, these old growth forests are so important because, 500 species of critters live in the older trees. They live in little cavities, and, imposing 50% of our birds, songbirds, 60% of, I've heard these statistics and thrown out, but 60% of our animals and 75% of our insects are being lost. And so, we really need to rethink, the value of unmanaged old growth forests. And, the other thing with Quabbin, that's like the water source for, the metropolitan Boston area, and they're logging right down to the shore. And, the trees are so important for water runoff, for filtering the pollutants, for, for the whole water cycle, for, I've been reading this book where, by Tom Hartman, where it says one full-grown old-growth tree has enough water, lets out enough, through evaporation. Lets out enough water through evaporation as the same amount as a 41-acre lake. So trees are so important for the water cycle, evaporation, filtering, holding water, holding carbon. And so,
So there are bills that are in place for some of the preservation of the old growth
Yeah, I know
forest.
there's a House bill, I didn't bring the number with me,
Yeah.
but there's a House bill to stop logging on state land, which is
So,
okay.
yeah,
There's
so-
only 20% of the forest in Massachusetts.
yeah, just, I'm sorry, did you want to say something on that?
I can understand protecting the old growth, there's nothing unique about a 100-year-old tree. But all trees in effect die. And if you're gonna stop logging on public land, okay, first of all, you're taking away a little bit of economic value from the state. I mean, some of the logging contracts are a little low, in my opinion, but the state has an opportunity to recoup some money, and you get forest regeneration when it's cut. Now, the old growth forest, and this happens in Northwest Wildlife Sanctuary in Wales, okay? At the time I was a broker, I sold them the Jersey Creek property from outside, Whole Forest on Management. And they bought it, okay, on the premise, you want to see how a managed piece of property, what type of biodiversity and animal diversity does it have on a property that different levels of canopy, as opposed to all, when you get tree canopy, all you get is songbirds that come to show up in the summertime. Birds need, all varieties of birds need lower growth, animals need lower growth, places to hide, and if you're just gonna have cathedral, it's an empty cathedral except for the summertime.
So you have the two sides right there. And that's part of the bills that we have before us. Massachusetts right now, we are more forested today than we were in the 1700s.
You're just talking about 20% of the forest, and we're losing 7,000 acres every year.
So if you ever have a chance sometime, up at Harvard Forest in Petersham, they have these wonderful dioramas that they have done showing from the 1700s to now about forests and what's happened with our forests and how good forest management can take place and that there is a need for certain things. Because, you know, when we had, when the tornado came through in 2011, and there were trees that were in lousy shape, that, you know, obviously you see what happens when we have storms and the damage that are caused by trees that are weak, are sick. And then the other problem was that afterward, those trees just stayed in the woods to rot. And, you know, we still have the loggers, people at the sawmills. I mean, we do have somewhat of a wood industry still left in Massachusetts, but it's getting smaller and smaller. And there is a value to wood that is harvested, and there's a value to wood that stays intact in the forest. And there is a healthy balance that can be found there.
I understand when people were so,
Yes.
you know, because the Wendell State Forest isn't just for the forest industry, it's also for people to enjoy.
Right.
And to just decimate it like that, those trees, you know, it's also for recreation and
I think, I'm not saying that this, yeah, I think part of the issue was, is that the gentleman that was the commissioner then that gave the okay for that, he's not there anymore, the DCR commissioner. And there wasn't, and part of, I'm not saying that this was the whole issue with what happened at Wendell, but he did a very bad job of getting the people involved and having them involved in the decisions. And that wasn't done. And I think that made people as upset as anything, that the process, that what happened. We now have a new interim commissioner for DCR by the name of Jim Montgomery, and I met with him last week. And in fact, he already had turned around one decision. There had been a decision that they were going to expand the deer hunt in the Quabbin, which a lot of the hunters didn't even want because they don't think there's enough deer in the Quabbin to necessitate an expanded hunt in this particular area. And that was going to happen, and my hunters were furious. And this new commissioner came in last week, and he put a moratorium on that, so he made a lot of people happy pretty quickly. So my only point is that he listens. So I think, sometimes that happens too. You have different people that are in charge of things and he's no longer there.
I mean, that was just a short, it was just a month ago.
Yeah, that was Leo Roy. He's not there anymore.
It should have been stopped.
Yeah.
But the other issue
Yeah.
was, okay.
No, go ahead.
Okay, the other issue was the other House bill about considering biomass or renewable energy. You know, Charlie Baker wanted to roll back and go back to
Yeah.
renewable energy. And I've heard that burning wood releases more carbon into the atmosphere than coal does. And also, other parts of the world, like the EU, are starting to, burn massive amounts of wood from North America. A lot of it's getting exported. And, it takes like 40 years to restore wood that's cut down for pellet stoves, and so it's not really renewable.
Well, there are certain things that, when logging is done, there's some things that aren't of a whole lot of value, and those things can be used to go into biomass. They're being used. Mount Wachusett Community College is one of the first biomass plants in the state, and that's still between that and they have 2 turbines. That's taking care of over 90% of their needs. Well, they've put the scrubbers that they have on those now. They're good. I mean, I'm sure there's still particulates that get released, but the scrubbers that they have on those to be able to run, DEP has come down hard on that stuff.
I don't think it should be
Yeah.
considered a renewable that you can get a tax break for, because it wouldn't build renewable. And
Well,
you talk
it's-
about the scrap,
yeah, no.
a lot of that scrap wood, should be going back into the soil, and it's, like that, with the 12-mile brook forest, it looked like somebody took a giant rake through it and just completely cleaned it up, because every last scrap went for probably biomass, wood pellets, and, then there's no material on the ground of the forest to recycle back into the soil.
But anyway, it's an issue, and that's why people have different views on it. Yes, Gus, I'm sorry.
No, that's it. A couple of quick questions. When I took you through the list of some of the bills that are currently in the legislature,
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen them yet. One that jumped out at me was Senate 1792.
You have to tell me what it is, I don't
It
know.
amends Chapter 61A to have all buildings on 61A land valued, assessed, and taxed as other taxable property, but structures that are essential to the operation of the farm are exempt. And I was curious to know, why was this even being proposed? What are the issues that somebody saw in 61A that would necessitate doing this?
Well, I'm guessing, now I don't know if that's under an API, I'm not sure exactly what the situation is there. We've had some issues with people that have agricultural preservation restrictions on their property. And the Department of Agriculture has really kind of tied their hands on what they can do on their lands. To give you an example, Stone Cow Brewery up in Barry. At different times of the year, they have, you ever hear of these Tough Mudder races? That they bring people in and, okay. About 5 years ago, when they were going to have the first one, the Department of Agriculture wanted to shut them down and said, you're an APR farm, you can't be having, because you're going to be compacting the soil too much. Never mind, not that 300 cows don't compact soil. But they didn't want people running through the field, right? And we made the case, we said, look at that time they weren't doing any beer, they weren't doing anything else, they were milking cows. In order for them to stay in business, by doing one of those Tough Mudder races, the town of Barry has about 5,000 people that live there. In that one weekend, they brought in over 9,000 people just to do that race. They almost doubled the town. They brought people on the farm that had never been on a farm before, buying milk, buying ice cream, buying cheese, and that race kept that farm going. So one of the things that we're trying to say to the Department of Ag, you know, we understand the preservation, the APRs that you have, that people have to do things for agricultural production. But if people can do things as well that are agricultural, like to keep their farm going, you know, there has to be some little give and take there. We ran into that situation with people that were doing corn mazes. You know, when they do the corn stuff, the department didn't like that. They didn't think that that was a proper use on the APR. So, I mean, you have to, you know, but that may be the reason. I'd have to read it through. I'm not really sure.
And
Yeah.
another thing
Oh,
that
oh.
was also, House 2551, which I was saying, it's an urban tax break bill. Basically, it extends, if I understand it reading properly, it extends the existing tax break for farmland, for over 5 acres farmland.
Yeah.
So the exemption from zoning and stuff, to land that's under 2 acres, but specifically in Bay cities, and we have budgeted 50,000 more.
Yeah, so one of the things on that is that because they're trying to incentivize for people to do urban
I
farming.
think it's a good thing.
Yeah. So that's part of it.
How are Gobi cities defined? Because I don't think South Street double Gobi.
No, it's population, it's the demographic, what the ratio, the makeup is.
Mhm.
Do you know what else, Jason, it makes? So typically gateway cities, you know, the Leominster, the Lowells, Lawrence, Fall River, New Bedford, they tend to be, and other gateway, but it has to do with the population and what percentage of the population is non-Caucasian.
And also a couple of, what do you stand as far as defining marijuana as an agricultural under Mass General Law 128 and allowing hemp under 61?
Well, we actually, the House already passed that in the Senate, because that was one of the issues that to try to say that hemp was not an agricultural product, which is crazy. So, yeah, to bring that under that, yes.
And that same thing
Yes.
as far as hemp is concerned.
Yeah.
I'm having a very hard time understanding why MDR is taking such a staunch
Yeah.
position on hemp. Because first of all, if you understand what hemp is and how it grows, no one that's growing hemp is growing hemp to get high or
Right.
to get someone else high. You could be growing hemp that, for whatever reason, environmentally, stress-wise, over-fertilized, under-fertilized, overwatered, underwatered, is going to drive the THC level up well over the 0.3%. And by the way, that 0.3% came about from Canada when they were growing hemp in Canada. It's an arbitrary number. At the end of the day, the whole point is you're licensing farmers to grow a product that, by the way, Dudley and I believe Webster and probably Charlton, they were founded on hemp. I've been told that by the economic development.
I think you came in a little bit, we were talking about this a little bit earlier.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay, but totally agree with you.
But I mean, at the
yeah.
end of the day,
Right.
they're putting so much stress.
Yeah.
Why would you want to put stress on your farmers when you're trying to maintain
Yep.
farming in
Right.
Massachusetts?
Right.
And someone can go over the line into Vermont. They're not even
Yep.
regulating it in
Right,
Vermont.
right.
And by the way, the people that are growing hemp are not growing it probably for smoking. They're growing it for
CBD.
CBD.
Yep.
And the reason they're growing it mainly for CBD right now is because there's no infrastructure. Because if there was, I was told not that long ago, Reebok was actually looking at growing hemp growers to produce hemp to make their products, their sneakers, their athletic shoes.
Yeah.
You're talking about plastic bags and recycling. Guess what? Hemp would make an excellent bag
Yeah.
for groceries or for anything, but you can't do it because there's no infrastructure. So why not give your farmers a hand? If you're gonna license somebody, you're holding them to a higher standard already. If I wanted to grow hemp, I'd be growing hemp for any reason other than getting high. If I wanted to get people high, I'd grow marijuana. So how about this? You set the level, you get the COA from the people that are growing the hemp, but if by some reason, act of God, hurricane, flood, fire, whatever, it cranks the THC level up over even 2%, okay? You could smoke an entire acre at 2%, you're not gonna get hung, I can tell you that, okay? Why are you putting these restrictions on people that you're licensing?
Yeah.
Why?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, before you came, 'cause we were talking about that, and
But you know
that
what
we
the
are
difference
pushing
is?
back.
That- Look at marijuana.
Mm.
They're giving them all kinds of leeway now, and my neighbor can grow 12 plants.
Yeah,
There's
That's a lot,
no,
too.
there's no restriction on how much marijuana they can grow, they're only saying 12 plants. So if they take a dozen plants and they put them on mega steroid, you know,
yeah, yeah.
additives or whatever, they're gonna grow a 10 or 12-foot plant per 12 times a dozen, okay? How many pounds of marijuana are they gonna get out of that? And you're gonna chastise somebody growing an acre of hemp
Yeah.
that's trying to make it for CBD or dog
Absolutely.
cookies or something?
Absolutely.
We need somebody that's gonna advocate
Yeah.
for the hemp farmer. And
Well-
I'm sorry that I missed it, we went to the
Yeah,
wrong place.
it's okay.
We went to the,
So
went
we
to the
are,
range.
so yeah, we've already pushed back on the administration on that, and we're waiting to hear back from them what they're going to do.
But they need to
Yeah.
understand
Yeah.
all of these things.
Mm.
I mean, anytime you license someone, you're holding them to a higher
Yeah.
standard. So if, you know what, if for some reason the THC level goes above the legal limit, you're letting people grow marijuana, that's federally illegal.
Yep.
Why can't you let the farmer grow hemp?
No disagreement here. Yeah, absolutely right. Yes, sir.
Could you take just a minute and explain the process? Because every year, thousands of bills
Sure.
go before consideration.
Yep.
And they are probably prioritized, and they only pick so many, you can only handle so many. Then it goes to Senate, then it goes to the House, then it sits somewhere, or it sits in committee, and it takes years and years to get a bill passed.
I'll
How
be-
can we speed that process
Okay.
up?
I'll be happy to give you kind of a legislation 101. So every 2-year session, there's roughly about 6,000 bills that get filed
Yes.
in that 2-year set. Of those 6,000 bills, very few get signed into law. And very few look the same going in as they do coming out. I was first elected, as Gus mentioned, in 2001. There's been one bill since I've been there in 18 years that passed in probably 48 hours. One bill. And it was, if it was about, I'm trying to think, maybe 5 years or so ago, there was a guy on the subway in Boston, and he took his cell phone camera and put it under a woman's skirt and took a picture. So they arrested the guy, haul him into court, and the judge said, we don't have a law against that. There's no law against that. Because of course, technology, the laws didn't keep up with technology. Well, we passed a law within 24 hours on that, and it was on the governor's desk and signed in 48. That was the only time that I've seen a bill move that quickly. But part of the reason is just this. We were just talking about one bill, and two people had two different ideas on it. We have 6.5 million people that live in this state. So what it basically happens, give you an example, as I mentioned. So in the committee that I have 2 committees that I chair. I chair the Environment, Natural Resources and Ag Committee, and I also chair the Higher Education Committee. We have about 300 bills in the Environment Committee. Those 300 bills, every one of them had a public hearing. In fact, I try to be very aggressive on my hearing schedule. Today was, every bill that we had in committee was heard. We had a hearing like every couple of weeks, at least once a month, that we started the end of March. Today was our last hearing. So we have no more bills left in our committee, unless something gets filed late or something happens like that. So now what we do as a committee, there have been some bills that we have already put out of committee. As I mentioned, we already put out a plastic bag bill. When the bill comes into us, depending on who filed it, if it was filed by a House member or filed by a Senate member, in that case, that was a House bill. We sent it over to the House. And so it's sitting right now in House Ways and Means. which is very typical. Most bills will go to either House Ways and Means, if it's a House bill, or Senate Ways and Means, if it's a Senate bill, because almost everything has money attached somehow. There's something attached to it. So their analysts take a look at it, and then they decide, you know, where it's going to go from there. Usually it'll go to what's called the Rules Committee, that they take a look at it. They're really looking to see if there's language that needs to be changed to make sure that you know, we haven't put something in there inadvertently that is against the Constitution, you know, so they take a look at all those things. So that's one reason it takes a while to get through that process before it gets voted on. So, so those bills are sitting there. And part of it is, absolutely, if there isn't, you know, if people aren't really clamoring and saying, we need to do something, if the Speaker of the House, the Senate President, you know, if people aren't getting the phone calls, if you haven't called your own legislator on it, they may sit there for a while. And it are the bills that get the most attention that'll come out. We just did an education bill that was that passed both the House and Senate. It's in conference committee, but that bill will go to the governor's desk before too long. It's going to happen. There'll be an education bill. On my higher education committee, we worked on a closure bill, passed the House and the Senate. I'm going in Thursday morning. The governor signed it into law 8:30 Thursday morning. So things do get done. Things do get done. They don't all take years and years and years. But a lot of it is what people are interested in at the time, and really who's knocking on the doors. And that's a big part of it. Yes?
Okay, not to beat a dead horse.
Yeah, that's all right.
But, and again, I missed the beginning
Yeah.
of the session, but and I should qualify this, I'm not yet a Massachusetts resident, but I own a 55-acre farm in Dudley.
Okay.
So that's where my interest lies.
Yeah.
Okay, I am going to be, as soon as I can get here, a Dudley resident.
Yeah.
I want to know what bill or bills have been proposed for Kent.
Oh, gosh, there's probably 15
Where
of
are
them.
they at?
There's probably 15 of them, but right now, I don't know, Jason, do you want to mention
I
on?
was just gonna say, if you, I can give you my email address after this, and you can just shoot me an email, and I can look up all, and tell you where, maybe I can give you an update on all.
Jason works for Senator Fatman, who actually represents Dudley.
Okay, and I did saw you before. Or was it?
No, that's a difference.
It might have been him then. Did he come here to the meeting?
Yeah, it wasn't.
Okay. I mean, I would dearly love
Yeah.
to be able to write
Absolutely.
my
Yeah.
reps, but they're not my reps yet.
Yeah, well, that's, you know.
But I am concerned about this
Sure.
because I'm very passionate about this.
Yep.
I actually believe that there's gonna be a huge market that opens up.
Oh, there's no question.
Everybody's talking about this gold rush. That's gonna subside. But the fact is, there are good things that come out of hemp. They can do amazing things
Yeah.
with hemp,
Yeah.
not just edibles and stuff like that. I can leave that to the people that grow the marijuana. I'm talking about the different things that you can do health-wise
Yep.
with
Yep.
it. Or even, like I said, somebody's gotta start looking towards the future, getting some infrastructure. I mean, we used to have factories all over the place in Massachusetts. I know, I grew up in
Mhm.
Mass. So why couldn't they be retooled to do hemp products, you know what I mean? Fabric,
Yeah.
you name it.
Mhm. Yep.
But we need somebody to advocate.
Well, there are actually people that are looking for, you know, we're working with the regional planning commissions. I was talking to a gentleman today that's looking to put something in Sturbridge on that idea, on reuse of old buildings. So there's people talking. Okay. Any other, yes?
There's a huge push at the national level to encourage veteran farming, and I'm wondering if you could maybe talk about what Massachusetts is doing and the opportunities available for veteran farmers.
Sure. Yeah, in fact, I had filed a bill that did go through, and it was for more opportunities for veterans to work with our agricultural community. Part of the issue was that we didn't have a really strong funding stream for it, but we have the language in place, but we don't have a real good funding stream for it right now. So we're working with the community colleges at their veteran centers, because every single community college, and actually all the other four-year colleges, all have veteran centers. And so we've reached out to them and to talk about for opportunities, and we're trying to match people up with farmers and communities that are willing to bring veterans on to work. And so we are doing some things with it. And we're working with the Veterans Administration on that. Secretary Urena is the Secretary for Veterans Affairs for the state, very pro on that. So he's been good. Yep.
Yeah, well, so Dr. Bonner's so distant. But anyway, I was just, Dr. Bonner too? Yeah, I was just wondering how Todd Small with GMO labeling bill was going.
I don't even know if that, I don't know if did he refile it this year? I'm not even sure if he did, the seed labeling. And part of it was because a lot of the larger groups have already done it on their own. So, the Home Depot that's selling any Agways, a lot of them have already done it. They've already done the labeling of the seeds. So I don't think he refiled that this year. Because in the past, it had been in our committee, and it wasn't this year, that I know of. Yeah.
I know that's something that people are concerned about.
Yeah. Well, part of it, there was some preemption on the federal level because of it. Because the feds had passed something, and so it was preempting what we did in Massachusetts anyway. Yep.
Okay, how do we find out if we are a gateway city? Referring to, the question that Gus asked?
Yeah. Is Southbridge? Would you know?
Someone thinks if you have 2 acres.
They can look at, I mean, I'm sure if you, it would be listed under under the housing.
Oh.
It's under, yeah,
Housing?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, thanks. And,
Jason may be able to find it out for you pretty quick. He has Southbridge too.
I'll be sending you an email.
See, I don't have those towns, so
Right.
I'm off the hook. None of my towns are gateway cities.
And the other thing, I just wanted to bring this up.
I don't have any cities.
Like start something else about the trees, but old trees do not just rot. They go to soil. Because they decompose into the soil. So they're very important.
Yes. Okay, thank you for that. Anything else before? Yep. Yes, sir.
Well, hemp seems to be the flavor of the day here.
Yeah.
But there's so much more to agriculture than
Yes.
just hemp right at this point.
Absolutely.
And, Dudley has 1,600 acres of APR protected property. And probably 99% of it is in hay. And our biggest job I think in our committee is to try and get new people into town to make this property more productive.
Yeah.
I go to the NOFA conference every year, and I'm amazed at the amount of young people
Yeah.
at these conferences. But they need help. The land is expensive,
Yeah.
machinery is expensive, leases on these properties, they need some guarantees that they can be able to stay there for 2 or 3 years without getting thrown out, So, I think those are issues that need to be addressed.
Yeah. Yeah, part of that does have some decent young farmer programs, and they do have some decent grants that are available for people. If you've been farming for less than 3 years, they do have some grants available for that. They also have kind of a clearinghouse for people who have property that are getting older, that may not want to farm anymore, and for people to come on to be able to do certain amounts of farming. So they do have a clearinghouse for that on their website. They've been doing the no-till grants that a lot of the NOFA folks have been getting in on. I know that Many Hands Organic Farm out in Barry, Julie, they were able to get one of those no-till grants. So there are some. But you're right, it's tough. I mean, Hanson's Farm in North Brookfield is the last dairy farm in North Brookfield. Well, Dave and Margaret, they're probably going to be it because their kids don't want to do it. And unless they can find someone else from outside the family that wants to come in and do, work like a dog 365 days a year, it's tough to find that because you have no time off when you're a dairy farmer. It's tough to find someone that wants to do it. Yep.
What is that? You were talking about, probably recycling plastics and things and styrofoam. Well, one thing I did just never could understand why. I know the Chinese are fed up with us, and you got all these abandoned mills. I just wish we'd do maybe more things with, recycled plastics in this state. I know Malden Mills was making, these jackets out of recycled plastic. I know there was a place in Ludlow that was making, I think, furniture and stuff out of recycled styrofoam. They were able to bring their styrofoam over there, but they're out of business now.
Yeah.
I just wish there was more of that in this.
Yeah, I'm not, I don't know a lot about what manufacturers are out there doing that kind of thing.
And the other thing, there was an issue that was talked about earlier on, and that was, somebody was upset about defoliation around railroad tracks. Well, I'm always walking the dog every day in the woods, and I love the Covey Wildlife Management area up in Belchertown, and I noticed that was all the vines and everything were just taken out by something that's got to have been Agent Orange or something. It had to have been some kind of herbicide. I was wondering what the story was behind that.
That I don't know, I'm not.
It's just, as I say, worry for the wildlife that could be destroyed by those kind of products.
Anyway, yes. Oh.
I was just gonna say, as far as the gateway cities are concerned, there's 26 in Massachusetts and none of them are in this district.
So, thank you.
We want to thank Senator Gobi for coming. I'm representing the Grange, and of course we're always looking for interested members. We have a signing out sheet if you're interested and want to know more information. We go up to a national level. We have lobbyists. So that, that's a tie in there. We also have in our audience Paul Wheelock, who's president or chairperson, I don't know the exact title, of the Dudley Land Trust. And he also is involved, we're doing things together as much as we can on the Aggie issues. I just wanted to give you some of the things that are upcoming. In January, we always meet the second Tuesday of the month, by the way. In January 14th, we are going to the Dreamcatcher hemp farm store that's in Main Street. They've invited us to come right in there, public invited, 7 o'clock, to view what they have on sale in their store and explain hemp. So if you are, I'm glad we had that whole discussion because hemp is totally different than what people think. So that's coming up. February 11th, we're having our annual pound auction, which will be at the Black Tavern. Public is again invited. What we do is everybody gets something that weighs a pound, and anything, we wrap it up, and then we have an auction. We auction it off because you got to reveal what you got before you go on to the next bidder. And the monies are given to a local. We've gone through different places that last year's went to somebody who actually works with the homeless and delivers food right to them. So we make sure it's going to something that's providing food for others. You wouldn't believe it. And you could bring something wrapped up. One person brought, in the past, a pound of sawdust. You'll find how hard it is to buy a pound of anything and if you go into the stores. They're always 0.7 ounces. You sit there and go, okay, let me think about my high school math. How much is an ounce to a pound? Right? So, but that's a fun event. And then March 10th, we're hoping to go to Generations, a store by Dell, who is a Native American. And we're working with her, but that's coming up. April 14th, we're going to have Poland Grain come. They came to the library just recently, but this is just before Easter. Let me tell you, one of the most popular exhibits at the Big E, I couldn't even get close, was the room that's about a quarter of the size where they were hatching out eggs. It was 4 deep. And cheers when a little chicken came out. Okay? So it is popular. People do raise the chickens for the eggs. And he is has a wonderful PowerPoint explaining everything. This will be at the Grange Hall. And he does explain what it takes to raise a chick from an egg up to maturity and what it takes, because it's just before Easter and everybody's going to go out and say, oh, the cute little ducklings and the cute little chickies, and they grow up. As we all know, they do grow up. and to their survival rate. He goes into how to take care, properly care for them.
And if you're curious, he also talks.
Yeah. And then, I don't think we're too mature with this. We've already met with Paul, DCLT, and we're going to have a big, hopefully big 50th anniversary of the Earth Day in April. So those plans are still being made, but keep your eyes peeled for that, because we're going to get as many groups in the town to help us out on that. Okay? Paul, do you want to go into anything? That's enough. We're just starting to meet. So these are some of the things we have in the future. Thank you for coming out. I'm sorry we put a sign up, but we switched here because we didn't know what the size of the audience was. And there are refreshments outside. Can't have them in here, but there's apple cider and lots of little treats. And as someone who bakes some of them said, I don't want them coming back to my house. Yeah. So thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.